This episode was brought to you by Awesome, AWSM. Awesome makes it possible for consumer brands to reward and motivate their customers with equity ownership. People that have even small amounts of ownership in a brand spend twice as much money per year, are loyal 3 times longer, and are twice as likely to refer their friends and family. Learn more at awesome.com, AWSM.com. All right, today my guest is Dale Majors, who is famous in several different ways. So this is going to be fun to talk about this. This is going to be some really good stories here. I'm really excited for this episode. So Dale and I first met many years ago at the University of Utah. I was kind of advising and working with a group called the Foundry Group, which was like a startup mentorship led by this really, really cool guy. I think I've mentioned him, Rob Webker, on the podcast before, but kind of a friend and a mentor of mine, and like a gangster pirate kind of startup mentor, like an A characteristic, but I think probably one of the best startup mentors that I've ever seen. And then Matt Hoffman and a couple of other guys that are really cool guys were involved in that. And I was lucky enough to kind of be a part of that group, which was super fun. And you were doing this thing called Bike Wagon, which we're going to talk about. But before we do that, I got to talk about this thing that I just recently found out about you and your family. The Majors family are famous table tennis professionals. And I could say
in Utah.
But I got to say, like, this is not Dave being like exaggerating or whatever, because your dad was like a legit table tennis champion. So tell me about that. Like, how did your dad even get into that? And like, how, like, talk about his like table tennis career. And then obviously you and your brother, do you have just one brother or do you have like?
I have 5 brothers. There's 9 kids.
Oh, 5 brothers.
Yeah.
So are they all table tennis like professionals?
They're all good, but no, on varying levels.
Okay, so is the brother? What's your brother's?
Bruce.
Bruce. Is he the best?
Yes.
Of the brothers?
Yeah.
Okay. I saw him playing at this recent tournament, and it was like the videos that I've seen on YouTube of getting like 10, 15, 20 feet back from the table and just hitting the pong or the ball like so hard that you couldn't even see it. I couldn't even physically see it. It was just insane. Yeah. So it was like super fun to watch you guys. So tell me about the Majors family table tennis, like legacy or whatever we want to call it.
Yeah. So table tennis in Utah, there was one main club. So my dad in 1973, 74 started a club for table tennis.
Nice.
And had people join.
I mean, did his dad, like, where did his love for table tennis come from?
He is good at most sports,
okay.
Like he
he
shot his age in golf at 69, so like he's a great golfer.
Okay.
He's a great racquetball player. He went to the nationals as an 18-year-old in miniature golf because he won the state tournament.
There's nationals?
There was a thing that he won. So he's just very talented.
Here I am just playing at Trafalgar.
He played at the boys' club. He grew up near the baseball stadium in Salt Lake. Played at the boys' club. So maybe table tennis had something to do there. He got into it, and Utah as a table tennis state is not very good, right? Like you have the coasts, for example, California, New York, a lot of really good players. The play here has increased a lot in the last 10, 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
So he had this club for 30 years until probably 2009. And in those 30 years, he won the Utah Summer Games probably 27 times.
27 times.
So as a kid, I would grow up watching him like win these tournaments and, yelling and like a lot of intense table tennis play. And we would, as kids, travel to like the U.S. Open in California or the Nationals in Vegas, or just different tournaments around. He went to the Olympic Training Center a few times. So we grew up playing table tennis every Friday night. So I'm better than anyone in table tennis. See, but now Alex, so now the network, so I can't say that anymore. But most people are like, well, I've been beaten by a 10-year-old at a tournament. I think he was 11. Well, 10. I think he was 10, and he was sitting on his dad's lap playing with a toy after he beat me. And he was this mean little kid.
It just
But
took
so
you to
good.
town.
There's kids, so I can say
That's
like I can beat
amazing.
anyone you know, but I've also lost to children.
Wow.
But even in the U.S., the 10 years ago, the U.S. national champion was 15 years old.
No way.
He's now in the top 100 in the world. But even in America, the highest ranked player I think is like still like 40th in the world. So
Really?
we're not very
So,
dominant in
like,
table
even
tennis.
as a country, we're not that great at
Yeah.
table tennis. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, when I saw your brother playing, I thought this was like the most insane table tennis I've ever seen, like in real life. I've
Yeah.
seen the videos on YouTube of the crazy shots that they can make and stuff, but I was seeing it like firsthand in real life. That was pretty cool.
It's a fun sport.
I mean, he was like dripping sweat, like seriously into it. I think you had to do a chiropractic adjustment like halfway through
He
the
did
match.
tweak his back. Yeah, he tweaked his back.
Yeah, I was like,
It's
this
active,
is
though.
so serious.
And he's an athletic dude.
Yeah,
And he
he's
uses all
fit.
of that.
He's fit.
Yeah.
It was crazy. So anyway, that was fun to watch, and it was cool. And then you were kind of like just dropped it like so nonchalantly, like, yeah, my dad was like a tennis or table tennis champion. I'm like, what?
We
For real?
we take for granted that was it was a fun, unique part of our life that we all learned how to play table tennis.
So,
well.
and with that many brothers, and like you guys are all super competitive. I'm assuming, like from what I was observing, I'm like, this was intense competition.
Yeah, I grew up not thinking I was competitive because I have my brother Bruce and my dad hyper competitive.
Yeah.
So me, I'm like, I'm a chill baby. I just bend over and lose. But in the outside world, I'm like, oh, maybe I am a little competitive.
That's funny. Okay, so fast forward. We met when you're like doing bike wagon. So tell us, how did that come to be? Like, where did the idea come for that? Tell us what it was, and like how did that begin? And kind of give us the bike wagon story.
Yeah, there's a store called NPS in Salt Lake that sells salvage freight. Things get lost at UPS. They go to a place called Overgoods. NPS manages their overgoods. If they get located, they'll get sent out. Otherwise, NPS will sell them and return a commission. They'll pay UPS a percentage of what they sell it for.
Okay.
So I'd go to this store.
I did not know this was a thing.
It's a thing.
Okay.
It's awesome. So I'd go to this store. They sell food as well, recovered food, so past expiration date. My mom would shop there as, I'm one of 9 kids.
A lot of
my
boy
mom
mouths to feed.
Yeah, my mom would shop there. My dad would be like, "Why are you never buy yogurt from there?" There's like, you can make bad choices when you're shopping at a store like that.
I mean, I was thinking you were talking about like shelved goods or canned goods, not like refrigerated stuff.
Everything.
Okay.
Everything.
Now you're dancing with the devil a little bit.
I've had some bad experiences personally. So I go to the store, and one day I saw a flyer. I'm 16 years old. I drive my little Ford Festiva. I see a flyer. We also have a store by the airport where we just sell everything else. So I drive out to the airport, and I had tried to build a bike when I was 14 and built it 80% of the way, never got the brakes on, almost hit a car actually, almost hit the car, and then gave up. And then I actually built a bike when I was 16. So I had shopped for components, rear derailleurs, cassettes, shifters, and I knew how expensive they were. So I go to the store, and they have a sporting goods aisle, and I'm seeing like, whoa, here's these bike shifters that are $200 new in a bag for $25.
Wow.
That's really interesting. Oh, these gaiters that are $50 gaiters from Mountain Hardware, they're $8. I need gaiters. I buy the gaiters. I keep going to the store. I've always loved shopping, and just like stores and commerce. I sold candy as a kid, whatever. I go to the store, and I always saw the same people there. Like, what are they doing? And then I found out they were selling on eBay or they were selling on mtbr.com. So that was a forum, a mountain bike forum. So I'm like, oh, I should buy something. So I bought something, shifters or something. I go and write it down on mtbr.com. Here's my posting. I didn't know what a lot of this stuff was. I knew what it was, but I would mostly just list all the part numbers, and then people would send me money orders. And that's how it started. So I get some money. I made $60 a week cleaning an office building. I went to the bank, and they gave me an overdraft for $500. And then I went back, and I'm like, wait, what's an overdraft? You can, if you spend too much money. I'm like, really?
You're learning about.
Did I just get my first loan, essentially, right? So I would go and just spend my overdraft on all of this stuff, and then sell it. And I pretty soon gathered a few $1,000 reserve of parts and things. And
wait, so was there a penalty? Like, what was your interest rate on the overdraft? Was there anything?
I didn't go in long. Okay. No, I don't. So
you had an interest-free loan of like up to $500.
In my mind, there was nothing.
Okay.
But there could have been.
Okay.
But I wasn't. I think
because this is kind of accidental genius strategy, right?
Oh, I was so clueless. Yeah. So I did that, and that's what I did through high school. I had a release period in school. I would drive to this store, and shop. Over the summer, it opened at 9 a.m. I'd show up an hour early because there was a line that would form.
Really?
Because every day,
every morning they'd bring competing.
Every morning they'd bring new stuff out. So I would get there first, and then the roll-up door would come up, and I weighed 100 pounds, right? I would get down on my belly, roll under the door, and
it was that competitive?
It was so competitive.
Wow.
And there were these other older, like, single dude bike racer, guys that were two others that were into it. I saw one 10 years later. He's like, I hated you. I still may hate you because I got in the way of a lot of his profits. Yeah. So I'd get around, go to the counter and say, I want that. Anything new, I would just say, I want that. I want you to, whoever could get the person's attention first and get the things would win.
Okay.
So we'd go and scour everything. So I did that, went on a mission to Portugal for my church, got back and just started selling again. I didn't mention my dad would take my pictures for me. And then eventually I was so good at buying, he's like, he would list and I paid him a commission to list the things. Okay. So this table tennis champion, Dad, he was a sales manager for a company that sold like conveyor belts and things. And he was mostly just being helpful to his enterprising son. Yeah. Right. And then, so our plan was he sold everything off while I was on my mission. And then when I got back, I still had some stuff to sell. I did multi-level marketing for 9 months with New Skin, selling the biophotonic vitamins and whatever. It was terrible. I hated selling stuff to friends. I rode my bike from Canada to Mexico over the summer, and when I got back, I realized, crap, I hate multi-level marketing. It's like an epiphany for me. I'm like, I hate multi-level marketing. Why am I not just selling bike parts full-time? I should do that. So I talked to my dad. We should just do this full time. He's like, yeah, I think that's a good thing too. Let's do it. Once I can pay you $3,000 a month, like, what do you need? Well, if I can net $3,000 a month, then I can quit my job. And he still had 6 kids at home.
Yeah.
We're living in Rose Park. So within 6 months, he was making $3,000 a month. I was making $1,500 a month.
Oh, wait, that's him. I thought you were talking about you making $3,000 a month.
No,
you're talking about once you could pay him.
Once he could take home $3,000 a month, he was going to quit his job.
Okay.
He had been making $60K a year in the late 90s, and he lost his job while I was in Portugal, and was making $45,000.
Wow.
So hard
he's
times.
Like, I can live on $3,000 a month.
And he's a guy. It's funny because he's like super talented and an amazing golfer. And he was a family guy. He served in his church callings. He raised 9 kids. He did his sports. He played. He was like one of the best racquetball players. Like he was.
That's amazing.
Amazing, but just did his thing, and so very capable and sharp. And his dad worked in the coal mines in Emery County. They moved to Utah. He had 2 jobs his whole adult life.
Wow.
And then my dad kind of grew up in the Central City area.
Guys grew up with this crazy hard work ethic.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
well, hat tip to your dad for raising 9 kids on a salary of $60K or less at times.
Yeah.
So that's amazing.
So I paid him $3K a month.
You guys were probably like really creative, really frugal, had figured out like magical ways, except for like, let's not do the yogurt from NPS is probably not the
that was too far. Yeah.
But being frugal and creative, like, do you feel like that upbringing has led to like your entrepreneurial creativity? Was that a big part of it? The nurturing in that environment?
I think it's a huge part of it because I was already kind of entrepreneurial, but my drive in college to be able to afford something and be independent and get married and everything else was through the roof drive because I knew that I was getting no support. I rode my bike for the first 8 months after I got home from Portugal.
No car.
I borrowed the family van to go on dates, the white Dodge Caravan.
Nice.
Didn't have my own car. No, it was more for like a year.
Wow.
And then, so yeah, I was super driven because of that. Knowing that I had to do it all was pretty motivating.
Yeah. Okay. So you kind of had this drive early to build these bikes, and the search for the bike parts kind of led you into this cool opportunity to do arbitrage between these like secondhand, or these found parts that they were selling for like pennies on the dollar. And then you started doing the arbitrage, like marking them up, but still at a discount compared to where, like the full retail price.
Yeah.
Then you built it up enough that your dad could actually quit his job, and he was kind of the sales guy, and you were the scout. You were just looking for
I was buying,
parts.
and he was like the accounting.
Okay.
Yeah. So year
so
one, we did
full-time,
250K.
You were like just scouting. So did you have to find other sources besides just that one NPS store? And how did you start doing that?
Yeah, so I couldn't really imagine. I remember there were certain people at NPS that I didn't see anymore. And the reason I heard was they found other options. It's no longer worth their time to go to NPS. And I thought, will it ever not be worth my time to because I'll have other things. And that was the goal. So my friend, I had this friend, Chris Fox, who told us about a bike swap in Denver. He said, there's a bike swap in Denver. Everybody goes to sell bike stuff. You can buy things at other booths and take them back to our booth and sell them for more. And I thought,
the same show?
And I'm like, that's interesting. So I hop in, my younger brother and I hop in a van.
The show's so big that somebody's like not going to get to this other place.
It was a really big show.
Could have found it cheaper.
A huge show called Velo Swap in Denver. So we go to this show, and within an hour, it started clicking in my mind that I'm like, I'm going to buy stuff here, but there's no way I'm going to try to sell it here. All of it goes for way more on eBay. I'm going to sell it for 2-3 times more on eBay, no problem.
Wow.
So I spent a few $1,000s there and told my friend Chris, he's like, oh yeah, why are we even doing this? So we then, for a couple years, went to every swap. Tucson, Arizona, San Francisco, Chicago. We'd go to all these swaps and bring things. So I diversified by going to swaps, and I bought more used stuff. And that got us from, $250K year one, $550K, $1 million, 1.4, 2.9 million, 4, 5, 6 million, 8. I think we were 6 million for 2 years, then 8 million, then 10 million for 2 years when we sold it.
Wow.
But so we kind of grew. But first
in the beginning, how were you pouring like pretty much almost every penny back into just buying more stuff?
We got an SBA loan, and I was just buying things.
Okay, so you did get a loan. What was the line?
$30K.
Okay. So you just maxed
And my dad
out.
had a $20,000 credit card.
Okay. So you could go as high as $50K if you found the right stuff. And then how fast could you move that amount of inventory? Was it like days, or did some stuff was it months?
Months. But we turned pretty well. We eventually, we'd have a few turns a year, and we grew our inventory to, just over $3 million. So, and my dad at first, he's like, I don't want to have $1 million. Do we want to have $500,000 of inventory? Do we want to have $1 million of inventory? I'm like, if it sells well, I think we do.
It's a
we
fair
do
question.
need to do that.
Like,
so we had.
Are we going to end up with like tons of stuff that we can't?
It was
get
really
rid of?
scary. Yeah, it was scary because we didn't know. We didn't have anybody in our world. Like everything that I do in coaching now is like help people build networks of other people that know, because my uncle was my definition of wealth. He had like a 5-plex, and he owned stocks. Otherwise, I didn't know anyone else in my world till I was like 15 or 16 that like know closely that had more wealth than that.
Wow. So you didn't have like advisors, mentors. You're just kind of like figuring it out as you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
After my mission and going to college and talking to people, I had all sorts of people who would like come over and take a look at our business and say, oh, you should maybe think about this. And I got so much great free advice. But at first, it was really hard. So
you glossed over something really quickly, though. Like, at what point did you do this bike ride from Canada to Mexico, and what inspired that?
So if I didn't love my family so much, I wanted to run away as a kid. Not really, but I loved the idea of like, I want to go and like on an adventure.
Yeah.
And I had another couple
like
friends that were also like adventure
Tom
bug.
Sawyer, Huck Finn bug.
Yeah. So we thought when we get home from our missions, we're going to ride across the country.
Okay.
And then we're like, no, we should maybe just ride down the coast instead. So we took a bus from Salt Lake to Seattle, a Greyhound bus. I've taken more Greyhounds than most. I don't know, 5, 6, 7 Greyhound trips.
Okay.
Kind of terrible. But we take a bus from, and before my mission, we took a Greyhound bus to Santa Barbara, rode to San Diego. So we'd kind of had a taste of the coast. This time we rode to Seattle, rode our bikes up, or bus to Seattle, rode our bikes up to Port Angeles to the border of Canada, and then we rode down the coast for it's almost 2,000 miles to the border to Tijuana.
Wow.
We didn't go into Tijuana. We just touched the fence and then had a buffet and drove home. but it was really, that actually led, stepping away. I've had a lot of value from, I don't know, I've maybe had 5-month or 2 long trips since then. And there's something about leaving everything for a while and coming back and seeing that it was wrong. Or that, like, I came back to multi-level marketing. I'm like, oh, wait, I actually don't want to do that. I don't like that. I should totally make a switch. And I would, I've had a lot of value.
So these breaks,
stepping out,
like, were physical challenges, but maybe gave your mental clarity where you could kind of really just think about what was going on, and then you'd kind of get these epiphanies about, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So that became a pattern that we're going to talk about. Like,
yeah, I love bike trips. Yeah.
Okay. So you're building, and was it what point did you call it Bike Wagon? So originally you were just kind of selling stuff under your private name on eBay or whatever.
Yeah, it was Dale P. Majors.
Like a thing?
I went to an eBay Live in 2005, and I'm talking to my eBay account manager, and he said, you sell bike parts. Your user ID, Dale P. Major, should probably be changed to something bike related. So I'm in my hotel in San Jose, looking through free, like $9.99 URLs. I'm like, Bike Wagon, community, bike, whatever, social, bandwagon, whatever. And Bike Wagon was $10. So nice. I changed it. Okay. I made the executive decision to buy bikewagon.com, and it all changed to that.
Nice. Well, I mean, it's actually a great domain. But it was like early enough that you were kind of like these early days where there were still .coms that were like gettable, and people weren't squatting on them as much as like they do now, right?
Yeah.
So bikewagon.com, it becomes a thing. Are you going to university at this point? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was going to school. I got within 7 classes of my degree. And we had
then Rob
10 employees. No, I had 10 employees. Probably 15 employees. Going on 3 kids, new warehouse, software transition. And I'm like, school is like too much to go to. Yeah. So that's when I dropped school.
Okay. You're like, I'm done with this
I still may go back. I don't know. Now I'm actually more interested in school than I've ever been. But during that time, I'm like, this is too busy.
Yeah. This is a distraction, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So married and 3 kids. So how and when did you meet your wife, and what did she think about this? Like, you're selling bike parts on the internet? Is like that going to be your job, or like did you tell her like, actually I'm going to be a lawyer, or like what were you studying?
Oh no. So my wife is, from small town Georgia.
Okay.
She went on a mission to Romania and got home and drove her like 15-year-old Honda back to Utah after 2 weeks to go to school here. So she's kind of an adventurous soul too. Okay. She had no clue what I did, really. Like, she went to a bike swap with me, but she just thought it was a hobby. She just figured, she just figured we were in love. And I think she figured that everything that I would make things work and be fine. Okay. She had no clue. She had no clue that I was like, I don't know. She was pretty, yeah.
Okay. Just supportive, just happy to be there.
Yeah.
Okay. So did you ever at some point say like, hey, I'm going to quit school and I'm going to do this thing, and Bike Wagon's the thing? Like, did you guys have that talk? Or
she's always been pretty involved in knowing what was going on. She's mostly, Dale, I trust your judgment.
Okay. So awesome support, just kind of like not blind faith.
I don't think
she kind of knew.
She knows. She hears things, but she has like, a good sense of, she has a good like street smart ability. I think the first time she ever doubted my financial decision was like 3 years ago.
Okay.
Ever.
So you made
I think the only time she ever was like, are you sure you want to do that? Are you sure?
Okay.
Like,
then
and that's like, after I was like successful in everybody else's eyes.
Okay.
It's like, I'm not used to you doubting me. Let me
take a minute here.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's cool because I ask because there definitely is a pattern in successful creators, successful entrepreneurs, successful founders in having a pretty good support group. I'm I'm waiting for, and I'm sure it'll come with just the volume of like stories that I'm trying to tell. But so far have not found someone who did it like against, had no support group or against like their immediate support group or whatever. It feels like one of the truths so far is that in every case there was a pretty good, even if it was one person that believed in them, that kind of was there. There was that stability, the rock that was kind of like, you can do this, or even if it wasn't pep talks per se, but just like had that steady confidence. So like, yeah, you got this, we can do this. I'm here for it. Like, in that supportive role. So
yeah,
hat tip to her. That's pretty great.
Let me take 30 seconds. I do hear, I've talked to a few people who say, I'm self-made. But, as you look into those stories, you're like, and I'm not saying I'm self-made. Yeah. I'm not self-made, but it's like, I'm totally self-made. And I'm like, dude, you went to like a kind of wealthy high school and were around all these different people who were this. Like, how do you not give, like, I think all of us are so influenced by, like, I owe a lot to Rob Woepker and Matt Hoffman and just so many people that I met along the way that helped like elevate my understanding, even though it was even just on the side.
To the story on your dad, like your dad was willing to dive into this thing with you and work with you on this thing and get paid $36,000, which, at any point in time is not a lot of money, but it was even still less than like what he had done in the past, because he kind of believed in you, had a lot of confidence that like, hey, this can be a thing. And so I'm willing to kind of do this. So yeah, it's cool to me when entrepreneurs are aware of like all the ways that they've been supported in the support group. And yeah, I do kind of bristle a little bit at the idea of like a totally self-made, because I still have yet, and maybe there is a story out there that'll be an interesting story, but like where someone did it in complete isolation, I just don't think that's a thing, or I'm skeptical at least, because there are, a lot of little people that help out along the way. Some even like not so intentional, but others like very intentional, like, you can do this, I believe you. And so hat tip to your dad and hat tip to your wife on that.
My friend Chris Fox that invited me to my first swap. This is a dude that like lives in a van. He was a professional bike racer in all number of locations. He's a really interesting dude really interesting dude. And he was like the first guy that I saw, oh, you're selling $50,000 a month. If you're doing it, and he was a sharp guy, but I'm like, I could probably do this. Yeah. And it took those types of examples of seeing other people for me to give myself a little more permission of like, oh, maybe I can do that. Okay. Like a lot of us that's really like the kind of, the Venture Anyway brand. The idea for me is like, a lot of us just need that like extra encouragement on the high dive to be like,
you can do
maybe I won't die. I could jump off. Everything's going to be all right.
Yeah.
Where sometimes it's celebrated as like, oh, that person's an amazing entrepreneur and they just do it. They're just so driven on their own. Yeah. Where I think when you look further, at least for me, I've been so benefited from other people.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why I try to point that out, I think, on the podcast. That's why I asked some of those questions, because I think that there's always like these, supporting roles, whether it's like a full-time supporting role like a spouse or a family member, or the Rob Woepkers and the Matt Hoffmans and the guys who just were positive, believed in entrepreneurs, gave you the faith and the confidence, like, keep going, or like, you can do this, and kind of, just that those extra little
deposits. They celebrated dumb ideas. They're like, that idea is dumb. And they're like, it's great. Let's prove the model. Let's do it. Like, and that, I'd much rather see a world that aired that way.
Yeah. It's the greatest kind of mentorship, I think. So it's cool. All right. So you're building Bike Wagon, and it's starting to just slowly grow, and you're kind of constantly maxing out these SBA loans and then turning it into revenue, starting to have kids. What was the goal in your mind? Like, where did you think Bike Wagon could get to, and what was your goal? Did you have a goal, or were you kind of just like, I'm just going to see how far this goes? Like, was there a plan, or you were sort of winging it? Like, what was your thought process during that time?
Yeah, what was my goal? That's a good question. I haven't thought about it for probably 10 years. But the original goal was, I remember my dad and I saying, if we could make $60,000 a year each,
you've made it.
We will have arrived.
Yeah.
Like, if we could do that, that would be so great. On our own, he'd mention when we were kids, like, there are family businesses that do like envelope stuffing from home, and you can make money doing that. Like that was our entrepreneurial awareness, right? So that was the first goal. And then as you go down that road and you get there, then you realize, and you meet other people and you realize, oh wait, maybe, wow, there's this whole other world. And you can get trapped continually being exposed to whole other worlds.
Yeah, yeah.
But for me, my goal
was...
Once
you fly in a private plane, like you can never... It's so hard to go back. I remember my friend, I got a ride on a private jet, like, way too early in my life, because ever since then, like, flying commercial was like the worst. It was like such a torture,
Yeah.
But until you know that, you just blissfully like fly commercial and don't think about it.
That's why you just need to camp often.
Yeah.
But I think my goal from very early was freedom of choice. I wanted to have enough resources that I could do whatever I wanted to do. And I don't want to do a lot of crazy things, but I just wanted the choice of I just want to work on what I want to work on. And if I want to go on a 2-month trip, bike ride, then I'll be able to do that. So a lot of my goal became that over time. I don't know if that, probably in year 1, I remember that $60K goal. Wow, if we could just make $60,000, be so great. Wow. And not have to work for somebody else, not have to get another job. Whoa.
Yeah.
But then I think it shifted into the freedom. I went to a pretty influential lunch with this guy who was 40 years old, so I must have been 25, 26. He had saved $1.6 million and invested it, and he lived a very basic life, paid off home. He drove a 10-year-old Honda Accord, and he lived on his $40K of stock dividends. And that, the market did well, and that grew, and it didn't need to be 40K for long, but as he laid out that model to me, it made it much more real of, if I had a couple $1 million invested at a decent rate, then and lived, simply enough.
Yeah.
So when I bought my home, we kind of, when we bought car, whatever, when we've set up our lifestyle to like, I could live on $80K just so I'd never have to be a total rock star.
Yeah.
But I'll have the choice.
The freedom was kind
so
of like
freedom
the
was a
pinnacle.
big motivator for me.
Yeah, I get that. Okay, so you're thinking you're just trying to get to that point, but then suddenly you like hit $1 million in revenue and you've only got a couple of employees, and then you hit like a couple million in revenue. Like at what point were you like, oh my gosh, I mean, I could take home like 200K, 300K, 500K. Like, did that start to get like, oh my gosh, like, what do I even do with this amount of money? Because that exceeded
luckily,
some of your plans? Or...
Maybe luckily and unluckily, it's an inventory business. So it was always very inventory heavy.
Okay.
Like, I think I never took more than an $8K a month net income.
Okay. Because
we were reinvesting in inventory, paying down debt.
Okay.
So, I drove a 8-year-old Honda Accord that I bought for $13,500.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
so my dad
many years, too. Like, when did Bike Wagon officially
04.
Okay. And then you went to
16. I sold it at the end of 2015.
Okay. And can we talk about like what you sold it for, or is that an undisclosed?
So we sold it for like, I'll give the basics of in a retail business like that. And it's interesting because it's changing a lot. Like retail businesses are hard, and that's one of the reasons I sold is I saw in 2010.
You're not getting software SaaS margins.
No, in 2010 I made a 13% net margin. And then by the time 14, 15 came along, we'd be between 4 and 7%.
Wow. It's the competition.
So, and that's with, I saw my gross margin go from 52% because we sold closeouts, down to 43% over 9 years. And tracking the business, it only, in that market, you have people who continually disrupt. I can work on a gross 35 margin. 12 points, 10 points lower than we were used to working.
Yeah.
Right. So a business like that will sell for 3 times, 4 times earnings.
Okay. So you get a chunk of money.
We also bought a warehouse, which was really nice.
Okay.
So
You
buying
owned the real
early,
estate.
yeah, owning
Okay.
the real estate was really helpful.
When you sold the business, did you have to include the real?
No,
Okay.
we it was a great. Here's the 15-second story.
Okay.
Buy it for 1.3 million. Try to sell it for 2.2 million. 10 years later,
Wow.
didn't sell.
Okay.
We waited 9 months, paying $9,000 a month, in lease in payments to get it going. We put it under a lease, sell it 2 years later for 2.5 million. Wait 2 years after that, it could have sold for 4.5 million.
No way. So
It's
you
crazy.
sold like right before it hit like the big.
Oh, it's
like,
crazy. Yeah,
hockey
before the
puck.
big thing.
Yeah.
So, but it was
The
still a real blessing. Like we were able to realize some good gain in the equity, and that's really what propelled me into buying our other co-working space and whatever. But it's just funny.
Okay.
I like that story and in some ways, in a lot of ways, I don't like it, but
Like it's a bummer, but
it's a good story.
Yeah. Okay, so you decide to sell Bike Wagon, and then what did you do right after that? Were you like, okay, I'm just gonna like decompress, I'm gonna take some time, or did you immediately have other ideas that you were working on?
Yeah. Can I tell one story first?
Yes.
About Bike Wagon?
Yes.
So it's one of my favorite stories. We eventually were like one of the top 10 internet bike retailers in the States, probably, right? Like I don't know where we were. We were one of, our suppliers would kind of tell us where we ranked as an account, but
And always focused on bikes and
bicycles.
bike parts.
Yeah.
Okay.
We tried camping. We did return salvage freight. We had a few other stops along the way, but mostly bike parts. So the same guy, Chris Fox, and I owe a lot to him. He told me, Dale, there's a trade show. We're at NPS one day, and he's like, there's a trade show in Vegas, and you can just walk around the show. And this is two guys like I used to wear like a striped shirt and plaid pants, plaid shorts, like total bum. Okay, Scout socks. I'm there in the aisle, and I still remember it exactly. You can go to the show and find pins and posters at different booths, and they sell on eBay for $10, $20, $30 each, because it was during the boom of Lance Armstrong.
Oh, okay.
So anything Lance Armstrong was crazy awesome. This was like 2004, 2010 or 11.
Yeah.
All of it. So lunch boxes, $200.
Wow.
Okay. Crazy. So I drive with my younger brother again to this trade show, and we're just getting, free poster. I'm taking 3. Free pins. We're gathering all this free stuff. We were just stealing stuff from this trade show, essentially.
Did anybody be like, you don't need 20
It was
pins?
organized crime for sure. I think I stopped feeling bad after 3 hours being there. It was like just funny, and you're like, what the heck? But while I was there, I realized, some of these people, like, what's everybody else doing here? And my friend is like in his mode, but I'm like, we should try to get accounts. But everybody's like, no. Your name is Dale P. Majors on eBay, and you sell on eBay, and you work out of your garage. We will never sell to you. Like, we can't sell to anybody. But I was like, wait, why? Like, you need a shop. Oh, Yeah. So eventually, each time, so I'd go every year. And, we eventually got a warehouse that had a little storefront. You can't do this. You need a repair area. We got our repair area. We repaired like 0 bikes in that repair area. But we had a repair area. We had a repair area. Yeah. So we started to get more and more and more accounts. And I like that story because it's like, I don't know, we were clueless, like pretty clueless, but just being there and trying it out, we eventually weren't clueless and we figured things out and built good relationships.
Yeah.
I took my wife and my first employee to an open house of our main supplier, and I'm getting there. It's like, hey, this is cool. We're like a legitimate account. I get there, and the national sales manager pulls me into a back room and begins to give me like this 20-minute lashing for like, your shop's not even real. And your repair area, you have no integrity. And yada, yada, yada. And I was like, we ended up, over time, we became great friends.
Okay.
I think he's even a recommendation on my LinkedIn, but over time, but at first I was like, okay, like now I'm feeling pretty small. My wife's out there and I'm getting, just totally humiliated in here, dressed down big time. I didn't mean it all,
I was like, somebody told me I had to have a repair area, so I got a repair area.
But I guess, it was just cool though, being in that, just being there though, you can then figure it out. So, even retelling that, I'm like, I need to be not be so judgmental of other people starting. I think it's so important to just support and encourage.
Mm-hmm.
And Webker and Hoffman, I think Webker especially did a great job at that.
Yeah.
Just like encourage and go along, because you will figure it out.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter. Life is long and you have time.
Yeah.
Doesn't, a lot of those lessons I learned were super valuable.
You have time if you play your cards right. And the one thing that I don't want to lose in the story that you're telling, I want to point out, is you had the mentality that I think was actually the perfect mentality to allow you to have the freedom and the flexibility to experiment and fail until you got it right, because you were living within your means. You weren't like going out and getting a huge house and a big mortgage and a brand new car. Like you were living frugally, which gave you that freedom to like, it's okay. Like you didn't have like these massive obligations that kind of were handcuffs in a way. And what I think is important for young creators and young entrepreneurs to realize about your story, that's part of the secret success, is if you want to have that freedom, if you want to have that flexibility, you have to have the discipline to live frugally, live within your means, not rack up a massive amount of debt. All the things that you own you. And you, from maybe part of your upbringing, but also this idea that like, hey, I want to have the freedom that I can get my money working for me and I can live within my means, which gave you the ability to like, why not? Let's go run this experiment. Let's try it out. And you had enough time and enough runway to be able to do lots of experience and learn all along the way. Do you talk about that with young entrepreneurs? Do you point that out to them? Because I think that's a really critical part of your success, that, 21-year-olds coming out and like, I want to be an entrepreneur right now. A lot of them have this like unrealistic, like I'm going to raise like 20 million and, just start living high on the hog and just, it's like maybe an unrealistic view of like what entrepreneurship takes, and the magic in preserving that freedom and flexibility by being in control of your finances.
Yeah. I don't think I talk about it enough. So I like that reiteration of it.
Yeah.
I was on a call 2 weeks ago with someone asking for advice or whatever, and they were in a really bad situation, no income, they're investing, they're taking loans. And I'm like, honestly, like if I'm you, do whatever you want. But if I'm you, I'm getting a job and taking care of some of those basics. Like you don't always have to like lever. I never like bet the farm in a big way.
Yeah.
It's like you kind of do what you have to do. And so some of those stories of like, I gave it all for entrepreneurship and whatever, I think can sometimes not be very helpful.
Yeah.
But just, yeah, if you can't, my dad is a 55-year-old, he was driving my old Acura because his car was something, and he's driving my old Acura that didn't go into reverse well, and it made a loud click. And if it rained, the sunroof would get water in it and it would splash down on the driver. Like, but he had the humility of like, he could have driven he could have driven a better car, but we were focused on retiring debt and being healthy financially. And I saw a lot of other smart people who just didn't, whose businesses we bought, like their excess inventory of smart people who, they're really smart guys actually that just didn't, because their structure, the business metabolism was too great. Yeah. They couldn't feed it enough. So for us, a lot of times I'm focused. I had a conversation this morning at Grand Trunk about what's the nut that we have to cover, and, getting really clear about some of that stuff. I think it's really important. And when you burden it with too much expense, it takes away your freedom. Yeah.
In fact, I'll be a little vulnerable here. If I have any major regrets as an entrepreneur or as a business person, it's that I could have been way wiser with finances, with cash flow. And so I think a big part of education around entrepreneurship is the power of money and the burden of debt. And, there are some strategic ways that you can leverage debt in your favor. I mean, you were doing the accidental like overdraw and getting an SBA loan to like be able to get that purchasing power. So I'm not saying, I don't want to imply that like all debt is bad, but there's this this like a mentality and the ability to like live pretty frugally in order to have the freedom and the flexibility to like not be locked into one particular track and all in on like it's all or nothing, or this like, if this doesn't happen, it's going to fail. I wish I would have had more flexibility in that area, and I wish I would have had better discipline around not being so quick to like, oh, I want a newer car, or I want like a nicer house, or that kind of thing. I that is a regret, that I think I could have been better, and therefore given myself more flexibility and freedom in the ability to explore and learn and try things and take risks, where it was like, ooh, the risks were too great if you've got like the burden of debt hanging over your head, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to kind of dive into that a little
Cool.
bit.
That's
I
awesome.
think it's valuable. But okay, so sold Bike Wagon, you've got some money. Where do you go from there? What was the next step, and like how long did you take to kind of figure stuff out?
Yeah. So I had a 3-year contract at Bike Wagon, and I stayed for like 3 months and was pretty much out completely at 10 months.
Who did you sell to? Was it a
Level
private
9
equity
Sports.
group?
Level
Okay.
9 Sports, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so good guys. And then they bought Second Track Sports, and they're doing great.
So they wanted you to stick around for 3 years.
And that was part of the like, hey, I'll stick around for 3 years. And after, I just realized that, it's hard. One person needs to run the company,
Mm-hmm.
and like there can only be so many. What's the PC version of Chiefs and Indians? I don't know. But there can
Too many cooks in the kitchen.
Too many cooks in the kitchen,
Yeah.
And so that that ended pretty quick.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That ended really fast. And I've learned, it's interesting, like I've learned a lot since then of like, oh, here's how I could have done better, or, different people I've wronged that I didn't know I wronged at the time.
Mm-hmm.
5 years later, like, oh, after it usually takes someone wronging me in the same way
Mm-hmm.
for me to like sense and feel it. You're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, wow, I did that too. I'm really sorry. But so I was there for a while, but really, I guess a few months. My wife turned over one day in bed, and she's like, Dale, it's 7:00. Why are you still in bed? I'm like, I don't know, actually. Like, I guess because, and this was within weeks.
Okay.
Like, I guess I don't really know.
Mm.
And I thought, I'm like, whoa, I really don't have anything to do.
Mm.
And that
this
was
is 7 a.m. not sleeping in for you guys?
so I wake up at 5,
Okay.
I wake up at 5
All right.
o'clock.
So 7 a.m. she was like, what are you
7
still
a.m.
doing?
She's like, what are you still doing in bed? I'm like, I really don't know. So I had sold I was the bike guy. I was the bike guy. I was the guy who sold things on eBay, had a quick success out of high school because I was only 32.
Mm-hmm.
I did this all in my 20s. I had 28 employees.
Mm-hmm.
And coming out of Rose Park, like I was one of the more successful kids,
Yeah.
of everybody that I knew. And I sold bikes. I was the bike guy. That was my identity. I sold it, and then I had nothing. I like, wait, what is my next thing?
Yeah. Who am I?
What is my next project that I need to work on? And my wife also knew, like, I have a lot of creative energy,
Mm-hmm.
and she doesn't need me to spend it on her and her life,
Yeah.
So she's like, Dale, you need a project
Yeah.
too. So I was working on a mentor told me to take a training course on Clifton StrengthsFinder. So I went through this like coaching certification to do that. And that helped me be a little more clear on, oh, here are the things that I love doing and what I'm good at, what I'm not good at, what should I do next? And that's really where I said, well, I'm going to run a coaching business because I love talking to entrepreneurs about entrepreneurship. And we've talked about the bike trip stuff. I love that I've been able to take nearly a year of bicycle trips.
Mm-hmm.
And most people, entrepreneurs, are like, well, that's so cool. And like, well, you have the same ability to do that if you wanted to. But a lot of what I found is a lot of people don't spend that energy creating those types of outcomes because the world doesn't celebrate those outcomes as much as maybe like money from a business.
Mm-hmm.
So helping people create the right compass and have whatever version of success they want, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to do coaching. I wanted to own a family travel business. And I always joked about having like my own in Ninja Turtles in the 90s, there were Shredder and Splinter. So Shredder's the bad guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
He had his own like hangout for everybody with like half pipes and packs of cigarettes and, and fun and video games and whatever. And I always joked, I'm like, someday I want a co-working space like that.
Yeah.
I want like this like underground thing, this like place to work
Yeah.
with fun stuff.
Yeah.
So I wanted those things in my life.
Okay.
So eventually, I started my coaching business and running like entrepreneur groups. And then 3 years later, and it was nearly 4 years, we found Grand Trunk for sale, and my partner Andy and I met him. He started campsaver.com, really sharp. He found this deal with Grand Trunk and said, hey, do you want to do this business together? We had done 2 bike trips with our families together. It's like, do you want to do this business together? I do, but I'm in my coaching business and I don't want to be full-time. So let me bring my brother in who just helped sell another business, and he'll be the operations guy, and we'll split 50-50. Bruce and I will split the equity of my side. So we started Grand Trunk together, which has become...
I mean, it was an existing
that
thing.
Like, it was an existing 20-year-old brand that was doing a few million a year in revenue in larger retailers like Scheels and Bass Pro and Cabela's, like really cool, great partners. And then we bought that, and we're turning that into like our family adventure brand. So I'm like, hey, coaching company, check. That's venture anyway.
Yeah.
And family brand, family adventure goods, check. That's with Grand Trunk. And then
the
2
shredder
years ago,
space.
2 years ago, we bought this old building, 25,000 square feet, old medical building, and like we have a rock wall that's being completed in it now. And we just demoed the wall to have like a cool golf simulator. So this is like boring middle-aged people shredder space, right? I will have.
I mean, is there going to be a skate
I was
ramp?
partnering, like maybe a small half pipe. I had a half pipe growing up.
All right.
In 8th grade, I built a 34-foot long, 8 feet high, 12-foot wide half pipe in my backyard.
Nice.
It was awesome for rollerblading. So I'm not cool.
Okay.
I was a fruit booter, but rollerblading. I'm not a cool skateboarder, but yeah, that's what they called it.
I haven't heard that for so
The skateboarders
awesome.
had a real campaign to slander all the rollerbladers, but
I get it.
I can still rollerblade downstairs. But we've got some really cool stuff happening there.
Okay. This is Builder Studios.
Builder Studios.
Okay.
In Bountiful, yeah.
All right. So we've got is Venture Anyway the consulting brand?
Yeah, that's
Or
like
is that part of Grand
that's
Trunk?
my and long term. No, it's separate, and it's really like my goal is for it to be an entrepreneurship community where I have 1,000 cohorts of entrepreneurs that are using good methodologies to meet and network. Everything I do is in a group setting, so it's all group coaching, group learning, and we have a couple models that we use for like a monthly strategy group. Regular learning. I kind of have a 4-month course that I send people through.
Okay. So we've got here in the studio, if you're watching the video, we've got like the Venture Anyway socks. Are these from
with premium packaging? Those are not from Grand. Those are not from Grand Trunk.
Okay. These are like your marketing giveaways for Venture Anyway.
and then this. I love giving away things, but this is our eco travel bag.
So we've got this tiny little bag that's about the size
It's
of
a sleep system.
Okay.
Just kidding. No, it's just a shopping bag.
Okay, so it's a cool bag that compresses down into the size of, smaller
hammocks.
than a...
We make hammocks and sheets and all sorts of stuff in beautiful prints that pack small. That's kind of some of our brand DNA.
That's kind of the heart of Grand Trunk.
Yeah.
Like super packable, super portable, compressible kind of gear.
Yeah.
Or like hammocks.
Hammocks, lightweight camping chairs, shelters, sunshades, things like that.
Okay. So bought that and you're growing that, and you've got the Venture Anyway, kind of the consulting, like group kind of consulting thing.
It's
and
the
then
business
Builder
I'll never
Studio.
sell.
Okay.
That's the project that I have now that aligns with
That's your lifelong...
with my love that I can just do when I don't have other things to do.
Okay.
So right now I'm very involved in Grand Trunk. In the last 2 years, I've been very involved in Builder Studios.
Okay. So Grand Trunk, is that direct to consumer, or did you stay in the big retailers?
Yeah.
Or how have you thought about that, like growth strategy? Is it serving you well to be in the big retailers, or is there like how much is the e-commerce part of that direct to consumer growing? Do you what's your strategy long term?
Yeah. So Andy built a direct to consumer business to $38+ million. So he's from D2C. I'm from D2C. My brother Bruce had a lot of D2C experience, and now we're mostly B2B.
Wow.
But we're developing and building out the direct to consumer as well.
Are there restrictions? Like if you're already in Scheels and these other big like retailers, do they prevent you or restrict you from doing direct to consumer online?
No, you just have to. There
has to be like
when you sell
pricing
to
integrity, maybe?
yeah, lots of pricing integrity. When you sell to independent retailers, they're pretty sensitive to pricing and how you're doing that. So we're a part of a lot of like premium outdoor shops.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to kind of behave in a certain way.
Right. Okay. But definitely intend to grow the direct-to-consumer part of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's been a really fun brand, though. And I'm really actively involved in sales right now, kind of the interim like sales manager for the next 6 months, 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
I've loved all the new stuff I'm learning, like just working with government buyers today. Like, I'm like, oh, wow, you just taught me. I've never learned more acronyms in 10 minutes than I did with you right now.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
this
there
was
are people
3 hours
whose
ago.
full-time jobs are just to sit around and make up acronyms for government, documents.
It was
and
crazy.
stuff.
Yeah, it was really. So I'm
interesting.
having a lot of fun doing. I like doing new things that are still not established yet and helping bring them up to some level of order,
Mm-hmm.
and then moving on to I like chaos. So that's where I'm finding my place, is like doing a lot more of that's why I take my kids on bike trips, because it's guaranteed chaos.
Okay, I want to get to that in
know.
just a second because we skipped over the one. Like we've got a couple of bike trip stories to talk about, but on this e-commerce stuff, what seems to be a little bit different between Bike Wagon and like Grand Trunk is Bike Wagon, while it was becoming a brand, it was all just reselling other like products, right?
Yeah.
Whereas Grand Trunk is its own brand. Are you guys manufacturing any of your own products, or are they all? Are you selling other brands under the Grand Trunk?
So
like,
it's all
sub-brands?
our own products.
Okay.
We have our own manufacturing capabilities. Yeah. So we work with
doing
different
that near shore,
we
or
work
are
with
you
different
doing that
manufacturers
overseas?
mostly overseas.
Okay. And you come up with SKUs. You're like, hey, we want to do this new thing. How do you come up with new product ideas?
Yeah. So it's easy to come up with. How do we come up with good ones?
Maybe I should have qualified.
How do we do it?
Yeah. I mean, it goes to this core example that I ask everyone, or this core question I ask everyone. How do you go from an idea in your head that all of us have? Everyone has ideas. But the difference is, like, how do you take an idea and turn it into an actual product? I mean, socks are a super simple example, but like a camp chair or a shelter, like how does it go from idea to an actual product?
Yeah. So one thing we've, done a bit of that's been good is, 3 years ago, I invested in a company in Logan. They'd won some different entrepreneurship competitions, and they needed help buying their first inventory.
Mm-hmm.
So I gave them their first loan. They did okay with that, but we're essentially licensing their patent, and it's an outdoor product too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm helping them sell their inventory. I'm licensing their patent, and I'm building a version 2 of that. So taking somebody else's and using our expertise in distribution and product design. We had some really good designers from like the North Face, past North Face people, where we've, given a pretty good go at developing new product. We've licensed other people's technology, bought licenses, our whole chair brand came from buying a brand that used to be an REI that, ran into some financial issues. We just bought all their IP and we just bought everything from them and brought it over. So, and we're developing some of our own products too.
And how do you experiment with like, is this going to work or not? Like, have you invented any brand new stuff, or it's like, no, this is a category that's already a pretty strong category, but we think we can just do it slightly better, or we can market it better. Like, how do you think about that? Yeah.
So looking into categories that are doing well and seeing like this organization as more of a travel product. A lot of times we'll validate with current retailers. Hey, we're working on this product. Here's a prototype. Would you carry this? Is this something you'll place orders for? So like the initial litmus test is if they would even carry it, because they think it has potential. Are you going to carry this? Will you pre-season this? Okay. Will you place an order for these products? Is how we're doing some of it. And then other stuff, we're like, wow, this is an item you need for adventure. It's a good category. We're going to invest and build this thing. So we're very actively. my partner Andy's like heading up the product development. He's really sharp, and we came from the retail background, so we bought tens of thousands of SKUs, and we went to every consumer, outdoor consumer show for 20 years, at least most of them. And
stole pins.
So we
and
have
posters.
Pins and posters, and I eventually kind of repented of my sins and got out of that. But so we've seen a lot.
So kind of
it's hard though.
Feel now over years.
Yeah, but it's still tricky. Like we came out with a few products 2 years ago that were like, that has been an underperformer.
I was going to ask, have you had any that were failures essentially?
Absolutely, yeah.
And what caused them to fail? Do you know? Know enough that like you learned from it, or it's just kind of like I don't know, man. Sometimes it's hit or miss.
Man, it's almost too soon to say. Still some bad blood. No, not really. It's with one of the products we actually didn't get as much consumer validation maybe as we should have. But the getting retailers to commit to support the product, I think, has been a real strategy we're relying on. And something that is very differentiated because there's so much that's the same.
Yeah.
So one of our products that's done really well, it's just very unique, and we can easily. I was on a call with a big chain of stores yesterday. Like, great, you don't want to get into chairs, but this, and I'm not going to try to get you into chairs, but here's this one chair for us that's killing it, like, and it's unique and different, and you don't have one like it. Carry that.
Just try it.
Okay, I'm gonna take your recommendation on that.
Okay.
So differentiation, but that's hard. It's hard too. There's plenty of people with Me Too's that are doing fine.
When you establish a relationship with a retailer like that, do they buy a certain amount of inventory and you get paid, or they just put it in their store and you're still responsible for all the inventory?
99% of the time you're getting paid and you're selling it. There have been like consignment relationships, but it's too messy.
They're usually not
They're
taking
buying
much of
the
that
inventory
risk, or
they're buying it. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They're purchasing the inventory.
So in that case, that is a validation that if they're going to carry it, they're taking the risk of like they're buying that inventory from you.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's good.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of like, in that sense, it's product market fit. Like if they'll buy it from you, then it's off your shoulders. You don't have to worry about it as much.
Most of the time, if
you want it
if
to be
you
successful,
sell it,
so they'll keep buying more stuff from you.
if you sell it too hard, and because they should have a feel for their customer, we've had product get sold in, but if the sell through isn't good enough, then it's great. You got an order, but you're not getting continued orders. So that's been a whole new thing. So, and I'm 3 weeks as a sales manager. So I've been in the business for 3.5 years, but I'm still like, it's been fun to be a newbie and to have like the fire hose of like new stuff come at me. Yeah. Because I haven't been, the first 3 years of Grand Trunk, I've been very part-time.
Because you've been riding your bike all over the world. All right. So now we're going to get into the bike stories, the family bike stories.
Yeah.
So the very first time you went on a family like bike ride, and when I say this, like I'm talking like my friends and family, when we talk about a bike ride, we're talking about like riding around the neighborhood for 20 minutes and coming back home famished and like thirsty and everything. When you talk about going on a family bike ride, you're talking about days, weeks, like a month, right? Like a real bike ride. So what was the first bike ride, and tell that story? I think it's a pretty awesome story.
Yeah. So to build onto that, I rode from Santa Barbara to San Diego, 300-mile trip. I rode from Canada to Mexico, 2,000 miles. 2 years later, we're like, hey, if we're single, let's go to Europe. We ride from Amsterdam to Lisbon, 3,500 miles. I get married. I'm like, hey, babe, for our honeymoon, we should go on a bike tour. So we rode from San Francisco to San Luis Obispo, 300 miles.
This was your honeymoon?
We might have fought half the time. 6 months after we got married.
Okay.
But my wife she likes bikes too. She's an adventurer, and she enjoyed it and liked it. So we have a 1-year-old, so he was, 14 months. And I'm telling my guys at work, I'm like, hey, we're going to ride to Yellowstone. And Brittany's all on. We have a tandem bike, which is kind of terrible, actually, because you have to pedal at the same time.
Yeah. So one bike, you're both going to be on this
and
bike.
We had a bike trailer.
Okay.
had a baby trailer behind us
Okay.
with our 14-month-old. So the plan was, hey, we're just going to ride north. We're riding north. And I'd always been like, my wife is a planner.
Yeah.
She probably assumed that I was a planner too.
Ooh.
So on the first,
How could you go on a 300-mile bike ride and not be a planner?
you can do
You
it.
just kind of wing it.
Well, yeah, you know,
Okay.
you have to have some planning, but for the most, anyways. So we were going to ride to Yellowstone, and so we leave first day. We start riding up, and we're like, wow, 89's kind of terrible. Wow,
Mhm.
there's kind of traffic. This is not good. Oh, and it's hot. Cars are zipping by. You know, we make it to the Willard Bay. All right, so we make it to Willard Bay the first night. We
Yeah.
we let our baby, you know, swim in Willard Bay.
Yeah.
You know, we're like dipping in Willard Bay.
Yeah.
We go to sleep. That night, we go up 89 to Crystal Hot Springs.
Mhm.
Again, we're on the water slide. We're in the hot pool. Hey, this is fine.
This
and
trip's
cool,
going great.
but it's hot. The next day, we ride to Logan,
Mm-hmm.
and we get to the Olive Garden. And I'm a fan of Olive Garden because it's all you can eat stuff, you know. And we spent 2 hours there.
Wow.
And
You ate a lot.
We're just it's hot, we're famished, we're just hanging out in Olive Garden. And my plan was, we'll just ride up the canyon and camp.
Okay.
That's like, in my mind, we'll
Yeah.
ride up the canyon and camp.
Yeah.
I've slept in parking. I've slept in a lot of different places overnight, you know, like, oh, you know, we tuck away and sleep. And that's kind of my strategy with the family.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know if my wife fully understood that this was going to be the thing. So I'm like, oh, babe, we'll just ride up the canyon. So we get out of Olive Garden, ride to Logan Canyon, and we're like, actually, this is kind of sketch. And I don't know how far.
The road is narrow.
The road's
you
narrow.
get a 14-year-old baby in a
14-month-old
trailer.
baby, and I'm like,
Somebody
maybe
makes one wrong turn.
maybe we shouldn't.
Ooh, that's kinda
It's going to get dark. Maybe we shouldn't go up the canyon. But we're still just headed towards Yellowstone. We're just going to go to Yellowstone.
Yeah.
Right? I don't even think I looked at the map or the roads.
You're just like, it's north of
Like,
here.
We're going to go north. Like, I actually flew to a trade show once with my buddies, and we're in Zurich. I'm like, let's just walk to Friedrichshafen. It's 35 miles away. We'll bring our backpacks. That's how we can spend a few days before the show.
Yeah.
We get out of the airport with a compass and a rental car map, and we started walking towards Friedrichshafen. And that was like, so it, you know, that's like,
Yeah.
this is
That's
the kind of the
extent
vibe.
of your planning.
This is the extent of like
Okay.
the adventure. So,
Okay.
anyways, we're near the canyon. I'm like, oh, babe, let's just ride down into the valley. This is Logan. It's a small town. We're just gonna go camp somewhere.
Mm.
So we're riding through, and it's starting to get dark, and I see this lady walking a dog. I'm like, hey, do you know of like a place, open field or something somewhere? She's like, you know, no, but maybe you could sleep in my daughter's front yard.
Okay.
And I'm thinking, I never turn down hospitality.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm like, you never turn down hospitality. That sounds great. Let's check it out. So she takes us like 2 blocks back into this trailer park.
Hmm.
We turn right, go down, and everybody's staring at us.
Like,
you know,
what
I'm in
is
my
going on?
spandex.
Yeah.
We're all there pulling a baby, hot, you know, June, July day. We go to the end of this block, and it's just a trailer park. And the front yard was seriously
Some weeds.
a 6-foot wide stretch next to the driveway of dirt. And I'm like, and across the field, I see a hotel. Like, oh man, you know, maybe we need to like go to a hotel. My wife is like holding the baby. She's like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? You are crazy. And I'm like getting the tent out because I'm going to set it up.
Like, we're doing this.
Like, here we are, babe. We can't stay in a hotel every night. We're not made of money. If we're going to go to Yellowstone,
Yeah.
$100 a night kills our trip.
Yeah. We
You
can't
know?
blow it all here on
We
the
can't
first
blow it
night.
all in Logan if we're going to Yellowstone. Anyways, so 5 minutes later into her, like, maybe having a little panic attack, but she's very understanding, holding the baby. The lady comes back. My daughter, she's not here, but you can probably stay here.
Mhm.
Like, that's what it was.
So, the actual homeowner, trailer
The
park
homeowner.
owner, did not even know.
there, no. So the lady comes back, and she's like, look, Jerry down the road has a backyard. I'm like, oh, let's check it out.
Let's go talk to Jerry.
So we wheel everything over. So no, we just walk over there, leave our stuff. Hey, Jerry. He's like, you know, overgrown weeds, just like tall grass. Here's this backyard, but it is a backyard,
Yeah.
way better. And he's like, I've got an extra bedroom. I was like, let's check it out. So we walk back into his house, and sure enough, he's got this nice bedroom. He's like, "Hey, you're good." So I'm like, "Great," and we stayed in that room. You know, my favorite thing, like we used this bathtub
This
to
guy
bathe.
could have been an axe murderer.
To bathe. Well, my life philosophy is you don't randomly stumble upon axe murderers.
Okay.
They find you.
Okay.
I think. But he kind of found us because he saw us, walking by. It was maybe a little risky. My favorite thing is we bathed Kimball in the bathtub that night, and then when we were getting ready to go to bed, Jerry comes in his whitey tighties.
No
Leans
way.
up against the door.
What?
Big construction worker. I still want to bring him a Christmas basket. I've meant to. We could find his, but he walks up and he's like, "Have a good night, guys." We're like, we'll just like keep the door
Fruit
open.
of the looms.
We'll keep the door.
Just
Fruit of the looms, yeah.
Dude, axe murderer for sure. You guys
We'll keep the door open. Because it's swamp cooler.
I can't
and it's July.
believe your wife was not like, "We are freaking out of here." What are you doing?
The next morning, 6 a.m., we get up, say bye to Jerry. He had to go to work early too.
Did he have his
He was a
pants
construction
on?
worker. I don't even remember. I'm sure. It was hot. It was really hot.
Yeah.
That's what you would go to sleep in. We rode 80 miles home that day.
Yeah. That was it.
We bagged it. We were like, you know what? We tried. Was
your wife like, if you want to stay married and want to ever see this child again, we are going home right now? Or were you kind of like, nah,
no,
I think we should go home too?
I don't think we put the thought into this thing.
Okay.
And we were buying bags of ice at the store and putting them next to our baby. This is our first kid because it was so hot. We're like, you know what? We'll just wrap a bag of ice in a towel so it can kind of cool the trailer down. We rode 80 miles home up and over Sardine Canyon.
Wow.
All the way home to Farmington. We were like, okay, we're done. But then that's where it was that trip that said, oh, you know what? Okay, the hills and the heat and the route was crappy.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew, I'm like, babe, maybe we can go along the Pacific Coast Highway.
Mm-hmm.
So we convinced my aunt and uncle to go, my uncle that owned his his duplexes or his fiveplex or whatever. And they rode with us. We flew to Seattle, we ride to the coast, and then we rode down to Crescent City, 750 miles.
Wow.
But on that trip, we're like, oh, temperate, nice, good campsites, crazy hills, and bad traffic. This is no good. So it was also like another kind of like fun but stressful experience with a 1 and 3-year-old baby in the trailer. And I'm pulling the trailer up hills. It was terrible. So then 2 years later, we had a 1, 3, and 5-year-old, and that's winter. I'm like, oh, babe, there's like a trail network in Europe of nice bike paths where there's no cars. So you can ride the whole time. So we're like, oh, wow, this is amazing. Let's go for like 2 months this time. Let's go for 2.5 months. Let's ride the whole thing. We'll ride 1,000 miles. And she's like, that sounds cool. Yeah, let's do it. So we boxed up our bikes.
This is the middle of bike wagon, right?
Yeah.
And so you're like, how are you going to keep this going for 2.5 months?
So I had a friend that he'd sold a business, and I said, would you mind, like, he kind of wanted to invest in us. And he's like, oh, I'll be your like part-time CEO for XK a month.
All right.
And just consult and learn about the business.
Keep the lights on.
Perfect. I'm out.
Wow.
And he was really good.
Okay.
Like, he was better than me.
Wow.
He was super sharp. I came back to a better business with better executives because he like mentored them. He grew a company to like 30 million, went public, sold it, few hundred employees.
Okay.
He was much more.
Did you give him some equity for doing that?
No.
Okay, just
no.
a paycheck.
Then we decided that like it wasn't really, which was good. I sold the business 2 years later, and we decided he took another opportunity, and he was looking. He vetted like 100 different businesses, and he was figuring out what to do. He was looking for his next opportunity. So, anyways, that time we flew to France, flew to Paris, took a train to the West Coast along the Loire River. Then we rode 2.5 months, about 1,200 miles into Germany.
Wow.
And that was the first one. And we've done a few since then.
3 kids.
With
that
3.
time.
Yeah, 1, 3, 5. And then 2 years later, we did it with a 2, 4, 6, and 8-year-old.
So was a 3-year-old riding the whole time?
No. So on that one, I pulled the 5-year-old in another trailer, and then my wife pulled the 1 and 3-year-old in another. Like, I pulled the 5-year-old in like a pull behind pedal bike.
All 3 were in trailers.
We pulled all of them.
Okay. I was going to say, like, holy cow.
And then this summer, so like I share the Logan experience because it was also kind of like our first trade show. It was a total mess.
Yeah.
But by jumping into the
unknown,
it, we learned so much.
Yeah.
And then
luckily came home with a child
we were
still
alive.
alive.
We had our kid, So last summer we wanted this crazy epic adventure.
Yeah.
So we've got 6 kids from 3 and 5, and then 8, 10, 12, and 14.
Mm-hmm.
So the 3 and 5-year-old, I pull in a trailer.
Mm-hmm.
I found a really cheap cruise to go to Rome from New Jersey, like $800 a person cheap.
Okay.
And then I found a United points to get back for like $400 each.
Okay.
So like I'm round trip to Europe and back for $1,200 a person.
Okay.
Pretty awesome, right? We take a cruise boat with our bikes in boxes to Rome. But 3 days before, and this is where my wife and I sometimes have arguments, I'm like, hey, babe, I haven't found a good way to get to the Alps yet. The shuttle's like $2,000, and the routes, even moving 6 kids and 8 boxes, 500 pounds of gear, any distance longer than 10 feet is really a pain. Multiple vehicles, even just getting into Rome. So we found out of Marseille, which was one of our stops, there's a river route that goes up the Rhone River into the Alps and connects with the Rhine River down to the North Sea. It's about 1,800-mile trip is what we ended up riding. So I'm like, babe, we should just get off early. Let's see if they'll let us just get off the boat 3 days early. I've learned I need to give her a day to process. I'm like, so can we just decide now? But it was kind of stressful. So she was on board. So we got off in Marseille. We rode 20 miles to the Rhone River, and then we just rode for 3 months up into the Alps to about 8,000 feet, and then down just a whoop.
Wow.
And then down to the North Sea,
Up
which
and
was
over.
so cool.
Was this all on paths, though? Like, did you have to do any major
90%,
roads, really?
yeah, some roads, probably 90% paths, 80%, and maybe 80%, but a lot of the roads they take you on are so safe that they're almost like quasi, they're not great. Like,
in Europe, they're accustomed to bikes. They're more aware of bikes.
And we're a whole mess of people
in their culture, right?
and gear and lots of, all of our kids from our 8-year-old up, they all carried side bags and sleeping bags.
Had they been on any distance trips? Like, did you warm them up to this, or was this kind of cold turkey?
Not this year, but they've all done, we ride to the Smiths and back 10 miles every once in a while.
But not like any extended trips with saddlebags full.
No, each of them has done it. From the age of 6, they'll ride their own bikes. And we'll go 30 miles a day on average, 35 miles a day. The longest day was 50 miles. But my 8-year-old daughter, she rode, 50 miles.
Okay. Was she dying? Was it pretty painful?
Yeah. But we eat lots of, I have a lot of travel strategies. So if anybody listening wants the guide on bike touring with kids, I have an ongoing Google Doc that will someday be a book that I share with people.
All right.
That just has different principles.
So
For the most part, you just have to feed people a ton.
Crazy enough to want to take their kids on a 2-month bike ride, then Dale's your guy.
So I know there are 3 people in the audience that would like to do it.
Okay.
And one person.
That's my entire audience.
One
I think
person
you're
will want
overly
to do it.
optimistic.
Well, someday of you 12 people, just kidding. I've shared it with 10 plus people.
Okay. So there
We're not to
are
tens
other
yet.
people who are crazy enough to want to do that. That's
But you
amazing.
can't do it unless you have the freedom of if you're burning $15,000 a month, it's just from a lifestyle perspective, I've always planned to set it up to where I could go. My business partner sailed from Panama to New Zealand, so he left for a year.
Wow.
So in the business, we have the culture of hey, look, you can unplug.
Yeah.
And that's an expectation we set. But it would be hard if I didn't, I've had to set up my lifestyle to do that.
Yeah.
And sometimes it won't be such that right now I couldn't leave for 3 months. And that's okay.
It's too busy.
Yeah,
Building
and I'm intentionally
businesses.
focused on building something. But so I wish everyone could go on a really long vacation just to realize that life isn't about really long vacations. It's really great to build and do other things, and you don't need that, but it's nice to unplug and do it.
Yeah. Really purpose driven. and being unplugged for a while. Again, you talked about that in the very beginning, like gives you this mental clarity about like where your values are at, where your purpose is at, like what's really motivating to you. And those are good opportunities, I think, to unplug. And you're teaching your kids how to do hard things, but also to like, be adventurous. And I mean, I think that's building a lot of character in them. I'm sure it is. So that's cool.
Yeah.
I'm just taking my kids to Disneyland every once in a while, and I don't think that builds any character. I mean, maybe waiting
who knows?
really long
in the
lines.
fullness of time, we'll see what
It's so hard
kind
to
of,
wait in really long lines.
Yeah, we'll see what kind of, who knows? We're
Yeah.
God bless us all in our quest to raise children, right?
Dale, this has been really great. This is super cool. So we're Venture Anyway is a group that you're doing these regular kind of like sessions, group sessions. Like, how would somebody, like, if they were interested in that, like, how would they find that? How would they join that? Is there a website?
So
LinkedIn
ventureanyway.com, Dale at ventureanyway.com.
Okay.
We have, several different options. And I love being part of people's journey as like somebody just as a side counselor almost, and just to help. I love being part of people's messes, especially so. And I think I'm good at giving comfort to people that are in the middle of that.
Yeah.
Maybe because I'm such a mess. But yeah.
Okay.
Dale at ventureanyway.com.
And then Grand Trunk, is it grandtrunk.com?
Yeah.
And you sell stuff there, but there's also, you're in Shields and you're in, like, what other major
you can go to
retailers?
Shields. For those in Utah, go to Shields. They carry a lot. They're a great partner.
Are
Al
you in
Sporting
REI?
Goods. Not in REI.
Okay.
No, Al Sporting Goods is a really great partner of ours.
Okay.
As well.
And Dick's or
Dick's
not
Sporting Goods.
Okay.
Yeah, Dick's Sporting Goods.
Al's,
They carry
Shields.
limited. They'll carry some of our hammocks.
Okay. Nice. Well, this is super cool. I'm excited to see Grand Trunk grow and Venture Anyway. You've invited me to a couple of those, and I've had conflicts every single time, but we're going to do it. I'm going to go. And then Builder Studios, you're building Shredder's hangout.
Yeah. It's really.
It's almost done.
I'm so happy.
Going to be a cool podcast studio
more
there.
done. It's more done. I love your podcast studio. And I've gotten great ideas. It's more done than it was, 2 months ago, and will continue to be that.
Mm-hmm.
But we're in the same like the way that I do things is like, hey, we're like going, but we're like not really going. You're like, wow, Dale, this is still like, you can be proud of like telling people about this now. It's like, sure, I like it's an I'm so happy about being able to do it. Like even walking out today, I'm like, I'm so just it's really fun.
Yeah.
To see a thing that continues to improve.
Yeah.
And to be a part of it. Like we're gonna have a golf simulator, and I'm gonna have, punching bags hanging from the ceiling, and I don't know, it's gonna be great.
Nice. I love it. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.